Hello, welcome to my commentary on frozen moments in Italian opera finales. So again, I'm going to do an overview, at least of the first half of the 19th century, rather than focusing on a single composer or a single opera. So this talk is on something I call frozen moment, which is characteristic of Italian opera finales. Back up 100 years or so into the heyday of opera seria, where you have a strict separation of recitative and aria. Remember that our sense of time is dramatically different in an aria and a recitative. In the recitative, you have action. Time moves roughly at the pace that we experience in life. Whereas in the aria, time comes to a halt. Well, in later 18th century opera, after Gluck's reforms, and certainly in Mozart's comic operas, the music is much more fluid. And especially in the finales, you can incorporate action. So the time is not completely at a standstill in the finale. In fact, it's moving along, maybe not at the rate of a recitative, but it's still moving. And in fact, in finales, as we know, you want to give a sense of an acceleration of at least dramatic movement, of things happening at a faster pace. Consequently, composers, to give some balance or to give some respite from this kind of accelerating action, they have moments where time slows down dramatically and even freezes. And I call these the frozen moment. So I want to back up from 19th century Italian opera and go back to Mozart. And go back to that great Act II finale to the Marriage of Figaro. You'll recall that that 25-minute finale had four waves, or four sets of conflicts. Each one comes up and is resolved. And then the next one comes, and then that's resolved, and then another one comes. And the first conflict, we recall the beginning of the finale where the Count... I'm going to turn the sound off. Remember, the Count is suspicious that Cherubino is in his wife's closet. In fact, he was right. Cherubino was in his wife's closet, but he's escaped. And Susanna has stepped in his place. Count and Countess don't know that yet. So you have this extremely dramatic opening march where the Count is determined he claims to be ready to kill Cherubino. So when they open the door at the end of this first number, out comes Susanna, singing a minuet. The tempo is significantly slower and has a very different feel to it. The Count and Countess are both disoriented, and they sing together essentially in slow motion. It feels like slow motion. They're singing long notes. Meanwhile, Susanna is singing much faster values. This creates... Of course, she knows what's going on. They don't. This creates an amazing effect that Mozart is the first composer that I have heard do this. He's projecting two different sets of characters in different experiences of time. So the Count and Countess really are in slow motion here. And Susanna is in a faster, she's experiencing time in a faster sense, and that's reflected in her values, the values of her rhythms. This is only possible in music. You couldn't do this in a spoken drama. Project two different pacings of time at the same time. Now, once the tempo breaks and moves into an allegro, Susanna takes Countess aside and explains to her. So all the characters after this are in the same sense of time. So be attuned to that as you listen to that sense of that ebb and flow of the experience of time. Later in the finale, there's another conflict. This time, Figaro has come in and has sort of put his foot in his mouth. He's claimed to be the one who jumped from the window when, of course, it was Cherubino, and the Count has the commission that fell out of his pocket, fell out of Cherubino's pocket, and Figaro is stuck having to explain why he's the one, why he was carrying it. The, so in this opening andante, tension is building as the Count is pressuring Figaro. Of course, Suzanne and the Countess are spying around the Count's shoulder, and they're feeding Figaro information to help him out. So when Figaro is able to explain that he had Cherubino's commission because it needed sealing, the Count reacts by tearing up the paper, and we have a continuation of the andante, but the harmonic motion stops and all the characters sing together. And in fact, they use this idea of the eye in the middle of the storm because you have this tension building up before, and then there's going to be significant tension afterwards when a new conflict comes in, and Marcellina and Basilio and Don Bartolo arrive. So this moment does feel like the eye in the middle of the storm. And the Ponte, the librettist, uses this metaphor of the storm to describe the moment. So all the characters at this moment are frozen. And then that breaks with the Allegro march and the entrance of Marcellina. Now let's see what Rossini does in The Barber of Seville. As I've pointed out, Rossini builds on Mozart's dramaturgy, and he patterns his opera buffas along the same kind of mold. Now, I hope you've read the synopsis, because this is quite complicated. The Act 1 finale, the Count disguised as Lindoro is disguised as a soldier and claims that he has to be put up, has to be quartered in Bartolo's house. Soldiers can do this in the 18th century, the 19th century. So he's created such a fuss that Don Bartolo is called the police. So at that moment, an actual military company arrives and claims that they're going to can be quartered there. So because we have a military officer, Don Bartolo appeals to him to arrest this imposter Lindoro. So this really builds up to an incredible confusion and chaos. And at that moment, the Count reveals his personal seal, that is, revealing his identity, only to the head officer. Once he does that, the officer salutes and calls a retreat. Everyone is stunned. Everyone, except, of course, the Count and Figaro. So they really do freeze, and in this time the librettist builds on that metaphor. So the name of this frozen moment sextet is called Freddo ed Immobile, frozen and immobile. And all the characters, everyone has a slight different perspective on what's going on, but for just unity's sake, they all speak in this rather vague metaphor of frozen and immobile. Everyone just simply claims to be confused and they can't breathe. All except Figaro. Figaro, here very much like Subozzana in the Marriage Figaro finale, sings faster values than everyone else because he is experiencing time, because he knows exactly what's going on. He experiences the time in normal time. So everyone is frozen except Figaro, who's sitting off to the side laughing at everyone. Again, this is a remarkable effect. In no other genre prior to the 20th century has anyone been able to balance these different experiences of time. But composers can do it through rhythm in music. And of course, once that breaks, then all hell breaks loose, and for the rest of the finale, it sort of accelerates to the end. I encourage you to not only listen to this, but also watch. It's quite comical and funny, and it's much clearer when you see what's going on. So before we move on, I'm going to take a break because I think it's best to break these up into a couple of different lectures. Um, After Rossini, uh, opera changes dramatically, and I've already talked about this a little bit, but the comic opera dies away and composers begin to embrace tragic operas.